Captain Vexthai's mandibles clicked with amusement as he studied the star charts displayed on his flagship's main screen. The bridge of the Bloodclaw hummed with activity, a dozen different alien species working in perfect predatory harmony. His first officer, a hulking Cretan named Murdoch, leaned over the tactical display with his 4 arms crossed. "Look at this." Vexthai gestured at the glowing boundary lines marking human territory. 47 light years of the richest trade. Roots in the galaxy, and they guard it with ... nothing. No patrol ships, no defense platforms, no warning beacons. It's like they're begging to be raided. The Ravik Consortium had spent months planning this operation. Their target lay beyond human space, the wealthy Centauran banking colonies, fat with unguarded wealth. The humans had always been oddly territorial about their borders, but everyone knew they were too soft to actually enforce them. Their military was laughably small, their weapons outdated, their resolve non-existent. "The human weakness is legendary," Murdoch growled, his voice like grinding stone. "They won't even fight back properly. Remember the Kepler incident? Their colony ship was being raided by Thornax pirates, and instead of defending themselves, they tried to negotiate. Vexthai's crew, a collection of the galaxy's most feared pirates, mercenaries, and raiders, erupted in harsh laughter. The bridge held species from 17 different worlds, united only by their contempt for weakness and their hunger for profit. There was Slicks, the Venomian assassin whose toxic breath could kill in seconds. Korvac twins from the Ice Moons, who saw mercy as a disease. And the mysterious Shade Walker called Null, whose very presence made electronics malfunction. Intelligence reports show their border region is completely empty, Vexthai continued, pulling up reconnaissance data. No military installations, no hidden bases, no automated defense systems. It's like they drew a line in space and hoped everyone would respect it out of politeness. The assembled pirates found this hilarious. In their experience, undefended, territory was free territory. The law of the galaxy was simple. If you couldn't protect something, you didn't deserve to keep it. "Sir," called out Zara, the fleet's navigator, a serpentine Naga, whose species had evolved perfect spatial awareness. "I've plotted our course through human space. It'll cut 3 weeks off our journey to the Centauran system. We'll cross there, border at the Meridian Nebula, transit through their core systems, and emerge at the Kepler Gate. Total time in human territory, 6 days." Vexthai's razor-sharp teeth gleamed in what passed for a smile among his species. "Perfect. Send the signal. To the fleet. All ships are to maintain formation and prepare for transit. And remember, we're not here to fight humans. We're here to prove they're too weak to stop us." The consortium fleet numbered 47 ships of various sizes and configurations. Battle cruisers bristling with plasma cannons, fast attack vessels, designed for hit-and-run tactics, and massive cargo haulers ready to carry away their plunder. Each ship carried a crew of the galaxy's most ruthless beings, creatures who had spent their lives taking what they wanted from those too weak to resist. As the fleet approached the invisible line marking human territory, Vexthai felt the familiar thrill of impending conquest. This wasn't just about the shortcut, it was about proving a point. The humans had somehow convinced the galaxy that their borders meant something, that their peaceful facade hid hidden strength. Today, the Ravik Consortium would expose that lie, crossing into human space in 3.2. The ships passed through the boundary without incident. No alarms, no challenging transmissions, no defensive response whatsoever. The fleet found itself in a star system that looked utterly ordinary. A few planets, some asteroid fields, shipping lanes marked by navigation beacons. It was almost disappointingly normal. "Sir," reported the communications officer, a multi-eyed Bathorian, "we're picking up standard commercial traffic." Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels. No military signatures at all. Vexthai settled back in his command chair, satisfied. Maintain course and speed. Let's see how long it takes them to even notice we're here. The consortium fleet pressed deeper into human territory, each ship's crew confident in their superiority and contemptuous of human weakness. They had no idea that they had already sealed their fate the moment they crossed that invisible line. Asterisk 12. Hours into human space, ship engineer Korvac Prime noticed something odd about his twin brother. They were performing routine maintenance on the Bloodclaw's weapon systems when Korvac II suddenly stopped mid-sentence, his thermal vision eyes focusing on something behind them. "What is it?" Korvac Prime asked, following his brothers. Gazed to where a young maintenance technician, a draconian barely out of his molt, was struggling with a heavy plasma conduit. "Shouldn't we help him?" Korvac II asked, his voice carrying an unfamiliar tone of uncertainty. Korvac Prime stared at his twin in shock. In their culture, weakness was meant to be eliminated, not assisted. The strong survived, the weak served until they died. It was the natural order. Yet here was his brother, genetically identical to himself, suggesting they abandon their work to help an inferior being. Help him? Korvac Prime's voice was sharp with confusion. "He's a tech drone. If he can't handle the work, he should be replaced." But even as he spoke, Korvac Prime found himself glancing back at the struggling technician. The young draconian's scales were pale with exhaustion, his movements growing clumsy with fatigue. For some inexplicable reason, Korvac Prime felt concerned about him. Similar incidents were occurring throughout the fleet. On the bridge of the assault cruiser Venom Strike, Captain Slicks found herself hesitating before ordering the usual beatings for minor infractions. Her crew's efficiency was down 3%, normally grounds for immediate punishment. But every time she opened her mouth to deliver the harsh discipline that maintained order, she found herself thinking about how the offenders might feel about being hurt. It was a disturbing thought for someone whose species had evolved to be living weapons. On the stealth ship Dark Whisper, the Shade Walker called Noel was experiencing something even more alien to his nature, curiosity about his crewmates as individuals rather than tools. He found himself wondering about their personal histories, their fears, their hopes. For a being who had spent centuries treating others as objects to be manipulated, this sudden interest in their inner lives was deeply unsettling. Captain Vexthai first noticed the changes during the evening meal period. The ship's mess hall, usually a place of rigid hierarchy where the strong ate first and the weak scrambled for scraps, had somehow become more social. Crew members from different species were actually sitting together, sharing food, engaging in what could only be described as friendly conversation. "Status report," he demanded of his officers, hoping to restore some sense of normal order. "All systems operational, sir," reported Murdoch, but his voice lacked its usual menacing edge. "No signs of human response to our presence. We're making good time through their territory." Good. And discipline? Murdoch hesitated, something that would have been unthinkable just hours before. "Sir, the crew seems to be adjusting to the extended voyage. There have been fewer fights, fewer disciplinary issues. Morale is actually improving." Vexthai felt a chill run down his spine. In his experience, good morale among pirates was a dangerous thing. Happy pirates were soft pirates, and soft pirates were dead pirates. The consortium's strength came from their ruthless efficiency, their willingness to do whatever it took to achieve their goals. "Send a message to all ships," he ordered. "Remind the crews that we're on a mission, not a pleasure cruise. I want full battle readiness maintained at all times." But even as he gave the order, Vexthai found himself wondering if it was really necessary. The crew was working well together, more efficiently than ever before. They seemed genuinely invested in the mission's success, not just their personal profit. For the first time in his career, he was commanding a crew that actually cared about each other. The thought should have filled him with pride. Instead, it terrified him. By the end of the second day, the changes were becoming impossible to ignore. Crew members were volunteering for extra duties, helping their shipmates with personal problems, even expressing concern for the welfare of prisoners in the holding cells. The ship's medic, a coldly efficient crystalline, had begun treating injuries. With something approaching gentleness. Most disturbing of all, several crew members had begun questioning the mission itself. Not out of cowardice or self-interest, but from a growing sense that raiding innocent civilians might be ... wrong. Vexthai found himself staring at the star charts, watching their progress through human space, and wondering what was happening to his crew. More importantly, he wondered what was happening to himself. Because despite his growing alarm at the changes around him, he was beginning to feel something he had never experienced before: genuine concern for the well-being of his subordinates. It was a feeling that would have disgusted him just days before. Now it felt almost ... natural. Asterisk. By the third day, the transformation was undeniable. Captain Vexthai stood in the observation deck of the Bloodclaw, watching a scene that would have been impossible just 72 hours earlier. Below in the ship's main corridor, Korvug Prime was teaching a group of younger crew members how to properly calibrate plasma regulators, not through the usual brutal training methods, but with actual patience and encouragement. "I don't understand what's happening to us," Murdoch said, joining his captain at the observation window. The massive Kreesan's forearms hung loosely at his sides, his usual aggressive posture replaced by something that looked almost contemplative. "Neither do I," Vexthai admitted, "but I've been thinking about it. Really thinking, not just reacting. When did we last have a proper analysis of human space? Real intelligence, not just assumptions." Murdoch's eyes widened. Strategic thinking beyond. Immediate violence was not typical Kreesan behavior. "Sir, I've been accessing the ship's database. Our information on human territory is ... limited. Most of it comes from intercepted communications, not direct observation. Pull everything we have. Scientific data, environmental readings, anything that might explain what's happening to us." As they dove into the research, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Human space wasn't just empty of military defenses, it was saturated with something else entirely. Trace atmospheric readings from abandoned monitoring stations showed unusual molecular signatures in the void between stars. Quantum-entangled particles that shouldn't exist in natural space. Complex pheromone compounds that seemed to be engineered rather than evolved. "Sir," called out the science officer, a spider-like arachnoid whose species prided itself on cold logic, "I've been analyzing the atmospheric readings from our life support systems. We're breathing something that isn't quite normal space dust." Vexthai and Murdoch rushed to the science station. The displays showed molecular diagrams of compounds that defied easy classification: part organic, part synthetic, part something that bordered on impossible. "These particles," the science officer continued, her voice carrying an unfamiliar note of excitement rather than her usual detached reporting, "they're designed to cross species barriers. They're affecting our brain chemistry, our hormone production, our neural pathways. They're rewriting our behavioral programming." The implications hit Vexthai like a plasma bolt to the chest. The humans, they're not defending their territory with weapons. They're defending it with what? A biological weapon? "Not a weapon," said a new voice. Dr. Zelkis, the ship's medical officer, had arrived with a portable scanner in his tentacles. "I've been running tests on the crew for the past 6 hours. This isn't designed to harm us. It's designed to change us, to make us more like them. Like humans? Murdak's voice was barely a whisper. Emotionally, yes. The particles are triggering the production of chemicals that promote empathy, social bonding, moral reasoning. They're literally making us develop human-like emotional responses. Vexthai felt his world spinning. Everything they knew about human weakness, about their soft nature and inability to defend themselves, it was all true. But that wasn't the real defense. The real defense was making their enemies become like them. How long do we have? He asked. Sir, I don't think you understand, Dr. Zelkis replied, his clinical demeanor cracking slightly. This isn't temporary. The changes are being written into our genetic code. Our children will carry these modifications. We're not just being affected, we're being evolved. The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. They were pirates, raiders, beings who had built their entire existence on the principle that might makes right. Now they were being transformed into something that would find their former lifestyle morally repugnant. Have you found any record of ships that entered human space and then left? Vexthai asked quietly. The communications officer's multiple eyes focused on his display. Sir, I've been monitoring fleet communications. Ships have been entering human space regularly for decades. But according to the records, he paused, his voice taking on a tone of growing horror. None of them ever left. What do you mean, none of them left? I mean, they're all still here, sir. Still in human space. But they're not pirates anymore. They're integrated into human society. They've become traders, explorers, even peacekeepers. They chose to stay. Vexthai stared at the tactical display showing the positions of his fleet. 47 ships, full of the galaxy's most feared predators, all of them slowly being transformed into something fundamentally different. Something that would find the idea of raiding innocent civilians not just distasteful, but genuinely horrifying. Send. A message to all ships, he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding. Emergency conference. All captains are to report their crew's status immediately. As the responses came in, the pattern became clear. Every ship, every crew, every individual was experiencing the same transformation. The consortium's most ruthless killers were developing consciences. Their most efficient raiders were beginning to question the morality of their actions. Their most feared warriors were learning to care about the welfare of others. The humans hadn't defeated them with superior firepower or tactical brilliance. They had done something far more insidious and far more effective. They had made it impossible for the consortium to want to remain what they were. Asterisk. The emergency conference convened in the Bloodclaw's main hangar bay with holographic representations of all 47 ship captains arranged in a circle. Vexthai looked around at faces that had once been the embodiment of galactic terror and saw something that chilled him to his core. They looked concerned, worried. Some even appeared to be experiencing what could only be described as guilt. Captain. Slicks of the Venom Strike spoke first, her usual hissing menace replaced by something that sounded almost like vulnerability. My crew is asking questions I don't know how to answer. They want to know why we're planning to hurt innocent people. They're talking about the families on the Centauran colonies, wondering if those people have children who will be hurt by our raid. Mine too, growled Captain Thrax of the Dreadnought Bone Crusher. Yesterday, my weapons officer asked me what happens to the civilians after we take their belongings. When I told him we usually space them to avoid witnesses, he looked at me like I was some kind of monster. You are a monster, said Captain Nix of the stealth frigate Silent Death. We all are. Or we were. I can't even remember why that seemed normal anymore. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled captains. These were beings who had spent their entire lives embracing their predatory nature, who had built their identities around being the apex predators of the galaxy. Now they were questioning the very foundations of their existence. "The situation is worse than we thought," Vexthai announced, sharing Dr. Zelkis's findings. "The humans have weaponized empathy. They've turned their entire territory into a transformation field that rewrites the moral programming of any species that enters it. We're not just being made to feel human emotions, we're being made to think like humans. So what do we do?" asked Captain Vertash of the assault carrier Painbringer. "Turn back? Abandon the mission? Can we turn back?" Vexthai asked his science officer. "Are the changes reversible if we leave human space?" The spider-like arachnoid consulted her readings. "Unknown, sir. The genetic modifications appear to be permanent, but the emotional effects might fade over time. However," she paused, her multiple eyes focusing on something in the data. "Sir, I don't think we want to leave anymore." The statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Vexthai felt the truth of it in his bones. The very idea of returning to their old life of mindless predation now felt ... wrong. Not just tactically inadvisable, but morally reprehensible. "There's something else," Dr. Zelkis added, his medical scanner displaying readings from across the fleet. "The crews aren't just developing human-like emotions. They're bonding with each other in ways that go beyond simple pack dynamics. They're forming what humans call found families. They're developing loyalty based on genuine affection rather than fear. And the longer we stay here," the communications officer added, "the more we're picking up human transmissions. News broadcasts, entertainment programs, personal communications. The crew is becoming curious about human culture. They want to learn about art, music, philosophy. They're asking questions about concepts like justice and mercy and love." Captain Vexthai felt something crack inside his chest. These were words that had never held meaning for his species. Now they felt like fundamental truths that had been hidden from him his entire life. "I've been monitoring the human response to our presence," reported the intelligence officer. "They know we're here. They've been tracking our fleet since we entered their space. But they're not preparing for battle. They're getting ready to welcome us. Yes, sir? They're setting up what they call integration centers along our projected route. Facilities designed to help former pirates and raiders adapt to peaceful society. They have support groups, job training, programs, even housing assistance for crews who decide to stay." They've done this before, Vexthai realized. This is how they've been handling border incursions for decades. They don't fight the intruders, they convert them. "Sir," called out the navigator, "we're receiving a transmission from a human vessel. They're requesting permission to approach under peaceful circumstances." Vexthai felt his heart when Eddie started thinking of it as a heart instead of a circulatory pump, racing. "Put it through." A holographic display shimmered and resolved into the image of a human woman in a simple blue uniform. Her expression was warm, welcoming, and utterly without fear, despite being surrounded by a fleet of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. "Greetings, Ravek Consortium," she said in accented but fluent galactic standard. "I'm Captain Sarah Chun of the human vessel New Horizons. We've been monitoring your fleet's passage through our territory. How are you all feeling?" The question was so simple, so genuine, that several of the pirate captains found themselves answering honestly. "Confused," admitted Captain Slicks. "Frightened," added Captain Thrax. "Different," said Captain Nix. Captain Chun nodded with understanding. "A transition is always difficult. We know what you're experiencing because we've helped thousands of others through the same process. You're not the first raider fleet to discover that there's more to existence than taking what you want from others." "You're not going to fight us?" Vexthai asked. "Why would we fight you?" Captain Chun replied, "You're not our enemies anymore. You're people who are discovering that they have the capacity to care about others. That's not something to fight. That's something to celebrate. As the human captain spoke, Vexthai felt the last of his resistance crumble. The mission to raid the Centauran colonies now seemed not just impossible, but unconscionable. A thought of hurting innocent people made him feel physically ill. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Captain Sean said with a smile, "you get to choose who you want to become." 6 months later, former Captain Vexthai stood in the observation deck of the orbital station Second Chance, watching cargo ships from a dozen different species dock with the facility. The station had been built by humans and former pirates working together, a testament to the possibility of redemption and change. He was no longer Captain Vexthai of the Ravik Consortium. He was simply Vex, coordinator of refugee resettlement services, helping beings like himself adapt to a life built around cooperation rather than predation. "The morning briefing is ready, sir," said his assistant, a young human woman named Maya, who had volunteered to help with the integration program. She had been working with former pirates for 3 years, and her patience and compassion had helped hundreds of beings find new purpose. "Thank you, Maya. How many new arrivals today?" 17 ships, sir. Word is spreading through the pirate networks. They're hearing about the changes and coming to see for themselves. Vex walked to the briefing room, where his old crewmates were waiting. Murdoch had become the station's head of security, using his natural protective instincts to keep the refugees safe rather than to intimidate enemies. The Korvac twins ran the engineering department, their technical skills now devoted to building rather than destroying. Dr. Zelkis had become the station's chief medical officer, his expertise in alien biology helping to treat beings who had lived their entire lives in the harsh conditions of pirate ships. "Status report," Vex said, settling into his chair at the head of the conference table. "The integration program is exceeding all projections," reported Dr. Zelkis. "We've successfully transitioned 2,847 former pirates and raiders into productive members of society. The recidivism rate is essentially 0. That's because we're not just changing their behavior," added Maya, consulting her tablet. "We're giving them something they never had before, a sense of purpose that doesn't involve hurting others. Most of them are discovering talents and interests they never knew they had." "Speaking of which," Vernick said, "Captain Chun wants to discuss expanding the program. They're getting requests from other species governments to help with their own criminal rehabilitation efforts." Vex nodded. The success of the human integration program had attracted attention from across the galaxy. Species that had struggled with crime and violence for millennia were now asking for help implementing similar systems in their own territories. "There's something else," Maya said quietly. "We've been monitoring galactic crime statistics. Piracy rates are down 73% in the past year. Not because of increased enforcement, but because most of the major pirate organizations have voluntarily disbanded after hearing about what happened to your fleet. They're coming here instead. Some are. Others are trying to implement their own rehabilitation programs." The Andromedan Syndicate actually petitioned the Galactic Council to be allowed to establish a human-supervised integration colony in their territory. Vex felt something he had never experienced in his previous life, pride that wasn't based on fear or domination. The changes that had terrified him 6 months ago had led to something beautiful. A galaxy where beings chose cooperation over predation, where former enemies became allies, where the capacity for growth and change was valued over the ability to inflict harm. "Sir," called out the communications officer, the same multi-eyed Bithorian who had served on the Bloodclaw, now running the station's diplomatic communications. "We're receiving a transmission from the Centauran colonies. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to thank us personally." "Thank us?" "Yes, sir. They want to thank us for not raiding them and for helping to create a safer galaxy for their children." Vex laughed a sound that would have been impossible in his previous life. Put them through. The holographic display showed a group of Centauran officials, their crystalline features glowing with what his enhanced emotional perception now recognized as genuine gratitude. Representatives of the former Ravik Consortium, the lead Centauran said, we wanted to express our profound appreciation for the choice you made. Your transformation from raiders to protectors has inspired similar changes throughout the galaxy. Because of your example, our children will grow up in a universe where might doesn't automatically make right. We were just doing what felt right. Vex replied and meant it. After the transmission ended, Vex found himself back at the observation deck, watching the stars. Captain Shun's ship, the New Horizons, was docked at the station, its crew working alongside former pirates to prepare the next group of integration facilities. No regrets? Captain Shun asked, joining him at the window. None, Vex said without hesitation. We thought we were strong before, but we were just efficient predators. Now we're something better. We're people who choose to build instead of destroy. The galaxy is changing, Captain Shun observed. The old model of species conquering and dominating each other is giving way to something new, something based on cooperation and mutual growth. And it started with a simple idea. Vex said, don't fight your enemies. Give them the chance to become something better. Outside the station, former pirate ships that had once brought terror to the galaxy now served as rescue vessels, cargo haulers, and exploration craft. Their crews had discovered that the universe was far more interesting when you were working. To understand it, rather than just taking what you wanted from it, the quiet border had worked exactly as intended. The humans had found a way to defend themselves without destroying their enemies, to transform conflict into cooperation, to turn the galaxy's most dangerous predators into its most dedicated protectors. In the end, the aliens had found out too, late, that the most powerful weapon wasn't one that could destroy. It was one that could create the desire to become something better. And once that transformation began, there was no going back to the smaller, darker version of themselves they had been before. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in his life, Vex was grateful for that change.